The numbers never lie. That's the first thing they teach you in automotive diagnostics, and after 22 years as a mechanic, it's become my religion. Compression ratios, torque specifications, service intervals, they all tell a story if you know how to read them. But that Thursday afternoon in October, when Carol brought her Honda Accord in for service, the numbers weren't just telling a story. They were screaming that something was terribly wrong. "Hey, babe," Carol said as she walked into my shop, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. She was still dressed in her work clothes, a navy blazer and pencil skirt that she wore to the bank. "The Honda's making that weird sound again." I looked up from the Ford F-150 I was working on, wiping my hands on a shop rag that had seen better days. "Which sound? The brake squeal I fixed last month or that belt chirp from the summer?" "Neither," she said, already settling into the worn leather chair in my waiting area, her phone materializing in her hand like it always did. "It's more of a, I don't know, a whistle, maybe a whine. You know I'm terrible at describing car sounds, Tommy. That's why I married a mechanic." She flashed me that smile, the one that still made my chest tighten after 18 years of marriage. But lately that smile had seemed different somehow. Practiced. Like she was playing a role rather than living it. "Let me pull up your service history," I said, walking over to my computer. Everything in my shop was digitized now. Had been for the past 5 years. But I still kept paper backups in filing cabinets. Old habits die hard, and in my business, documentation was everything. The screen populated with Carol's Honda's complete history: oil changes, tire rotations, brake jobs, everything meticulously logged with dates, mileage, and detailed notes. That's when I saw it. "Says here you're due for your 90,000-mile service," I said, frowning at the screen. "But Carol, you just had the 75,000-mile service 3 months ago. That's 15,000 miles in 3 months?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "The commute's been absolutely brutal lately. You know how bad traffic's gotten since they started that highway construction project. Some days it takes me 2 hours just to get home. And I've been driving out to see Mom more often since Dad passed. Her father had died 14 months ago. Heart attack at his workbench, building another one of his model trains. It had hit Carol's mother hard, and Carol had been making regular visits. But even so, 2 hours in traffic doesn't add miles, Carol. It adds time. Your commute to the bank is 12 miles each way. Even if traffic doubles your drive time, it's still only 12 miles. Now she looked up, and there was something in her eyes. A flash of irritation. Fear? It was gone before I could identify it. "I've been taking different routes to avoid the construction," she said. "Sometimes I go all the way around on 275. And there's been a lot of extra driving for work, visiting clients, checking on properties for loan assessments. You know how it is." I did know how it was. Carol had been a loan officer at First National Bank for 15 years. She occasionally visited properties, but it was maybe once a month, not daily. And 275 would add maybe 5 miles to her commute, not thousands. "I'll take a look at it," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Want to wait, or should I drive you home when I'm done?" "Janet's actually on her way," she said quickly. "We're going to grab coffee and catch up. Text me when it's ready." Janet Patterson, Carol's best friend since college. They had a book club together every Saturday, coffee dates during the week, the kind of friendship that had survived marriages, divorces, in Janet's case, and decades of life changes. "Sure," I said. "Should have it done in a couple hours." Carol stood, smoothing her skirt, and walked over to kiss my cheek. She smelled like the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas. Chanel number 5, expensive stuff that she only wore on special occasions. Why was she wearing it on a random Thursday? "Thanks, honey. You're the best." I watched her leave, watched Janet's silver Camry pull up right on cue. Too convenient, too prepared, like they'd coordinated this in advance. Once they were gone, I pulled Carol's Honda into the bay and popped the hood. My trained eye immediately cataloged what I was seeing, and none of it made sense. The oil was still relatively clean, consistent with the change I'd done 6 weeks ago at roughly 3,000 miles. The air filter was barely dusty. I pulled out my tire depth gauge and checked the tread. Maybe 3,000 miles of wear, if that. Every physical indicator suggested the car had been driven about 3,000 miles since the last service. But the odometer clearly showed 90,847 miles. That was 15,000 miles in 3 months, or 5,000 miles per month, or roughly 165 miles per day, every single day. I slid under the car in my creeper, my mind already racing through possibilities. Odometer fraud was common in the used car business. I'd seen dozens of cases over the years. Cars with rolled-back mileage for lease returns, vehicles with disconnected speedometer cables to preserve warranty coverage. But this was my wife's car, in my shop. And if someone was tampering with it, there would be evidence. My fingers found the speedometer cable connection by muscle memory. In modern cars, everything was electronic. But Carol's 2008 Honda still had a physical cable connecting the transmission to the speedometer. That's when I felt them. Fresh scratches on the cable nut. Tool marks that weren't mine. I always tightened speedometer cable nuts to exactly 18 foot-pounds of torque using my calibrated wrench. It was excessive, maybe, but consistency was key in my work. This nut was finger loose. Someone had been disconnecting and reconnecting it. Recently. Frequently. My chest went cold, the kind of cold that spreads from your sternum outward when you realize something fundamental about your life might be a lie. I grabbed my LED work light and examined the connection more closely. The wear pattern on the threads, the slight elongation of the mounting hole, the scratches on the surrounding metal. Someone had been doing this regularly. Practiced. Efficient. I rolled out from under the car and grabbed my magnetic pickup tool, the one I used to retrieve dropped bolts from engine bays. I swept it methodically under the chassis, checking every possible hiding spot. Behind the rear axle, stuck to the frame with its own magnet, I found a small metal box, the kind you might use to hide a spare key. Inside were 3 items: a backup speedometer cable nut, pre-worn to match the one on the car, a pair of needle-nose pliers, and a small tube of anti-seize compound to prevent the threads from galling with repeated use. My wife had built a kit for odometer fraud. I stood there in my shop, holding that little magnetic box, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Carol had been disconnecting her speedometer cable, regularly, deliberately. She'd been hiding miles, probably thousands of them. But why? Where was she going that required this level of deception? I photographed everything: the tool marks, the loose nut, the contents of the magnetic box. Then I reinstalled everything exactly as I'd found it. If Carol was hiding something, I needed to know what it was before I confronted her. The whistle she'd mentioned turned out to be nothing: a slightly loose heat shield that took 5 minutes to fix. I texted her that the car was ready, then waited in my office, staring at those photos on my phone. The evidence was undeniable, but the motive was a complete mystery. Carol returned 2 hours later with Janet. They were laughing about something, Carol's face flushed with amusement or maybe wine. They'd clearly had more than just coffee. "All fixed?" Carol asked, collecting her keys from the pegboard. "Good as new," I said, watching her face carefully. The heat shield was just a little loose. Tightened it up, no charge. "My hero," she said, and kissed me again. The perfume was stronger now, mixed with the scent of white wine and something else. Cigarette smoke? Carol didn't smoke, and neither did Janet. "How was coffee with Janet?" "Oh, you know. She's dating someone new. A lawyer this time. Says she's done with contractors forever." Carol laughed. "We ended up getting lunch, too." That new Italian place on 5th Street? 5th Street was in the opposite direction from where they'd actually gone, according to the timestamps on my security cameras that showed them heading north on Main. Another lie, small and unnecessary, added to whatever larger deception was happening. That evening at home, I watched Carol across the dinner table with new eyes. She'd changed into comfortable clothes, yoga pants and one of my old shop t-shirts, and was telling me about her day at the bank like nothing was wrong. "The Petersons finally got approved for their mortgage," she said, cutting her chicken with precise movements. "Took 3 tries, but we made it work. They're so excited about the house." "That's great," I said, though my mind was elsewhere. "Hey, how's your mom doing? You mentioned you've been visiting her more often." "Oh, good days and bad days. She's lonely, obviously. 43 years of marriage, and suddenly she's alone in that big house." Carol took a sip of wine. "I really should visit more often." "Maybe I could come with you this weekend," I suggested. "Haven't seen her in a while." Carol's hand paused halfway to her wine glass. Just for a moment. Barely noticeable if you weren't watching for it. "That's sweet, but you know how she gets. She'll put you to work fixing every little thing in the house. You deserve a real weekend off. Besides, I'm going to book club Saturday, remember?" "Right. Book club. What are you reading this month?" "That new thriller everyone's talking about. The Last Mile or something like that. About a woman who discovers her husband has been lying to her for years." She laughed, the irony apparently lost on her. "It's a bit predictable, honestly. Like anyone could maintain that level of deception without their spouse noticing. These writers have no idea how marriage actually works." I almost choked on my chicken. After dinner, Carol went to bed early, claiming a headache from the wine at lunch. I stayed up in my home office, supposedly working on invoices and parts orders. But really, I was researching. I started with the basics: how to disconnect a speedometer cable, how long it would take, what tools you'd need. YouTube had dozens of videos showing the process. With practice, someone could disconnect and reconnect a cable in under 30 seconds. The anti-seize compound would make it even faster, preventing the threads from binding. But why? What would motivate someone to hide their mileage so carefully? I thought about the obvious possibilities. An affair was the first thing that came to mind. Carol driving somewhere for regular meetings with someone, far enough away that the mileage would be noticeable. But 5,000 extra miles per month? That was excessive even for an affair. Unless she was driving very far, multiple times per week, somewhere that required highway miles, consistent routes, regular schedules. At 2 a.m., I crept out to the garage with a flashlight. Carol's breathing was deep and steady upstairs, the rhythm I'd learned to recognize over 18 years. Real sleep, not pretense. I examined her Honda more thoroughly this time, documenting everything with my phone camera. The speedometer cable nut and tool marks, obviously. But I also found other things. Tiny scratches on the dashboard near the instrument cluster where someone had been removing the panel. Probably to check the actual odometer against the displayed reading, making sure the discrepancy wasn't becoming too obvious. In the glove compartment, under the owner's manual, I found a small notebook. Inside were columns of numbers, dates, starting mileage, ending mileage, actual miles. Carol had been tracking her deception, making sure she didn't lose count of the real versus displayed mileage. The entries went back 4 years. 4 years of hidden miles. 4 years of systematic deception. 4 years of driving somewhere she didn't want me to know about. I photographed every page, then replaced the notebook exactly where I'd found it. My shop had recently upgraded our diagnostic equipment as part of an insurance requirement for handling newer vehicles. The package included GPS trackers for test drives and customer vehicle monitoring, small devices that could track location, speed, stops, and routes in real time. I installed one behind the OBD port, where no one would look unless they were specifically searching for it. A second one went inside the driver's seat cushion, sewn into the foam where it couldn't be detected. a third in the trunk's spare tire well, magnetically attached to the metal. 3 trackers might seem like overkill, but I'd learned something about Carol tonight. She was thorough. If she was hiding 80,000 miles over 4 years, she was committed to this deception. I needed to be equally committed to uncovering it. Back in bed, I lay awake listening to Carol breathe. 18 years of marriage. 18 years of what I thought was trust, partnership, love. We'd built a life together, started my shop together, bought this house together, planned our future together. We'd talked about kids but decided we were happy, just the two of us. We'd survived her father's death, my mother's cancer scare, the recession that almost killed my business. Or at least, I thought we'd survive those things together. Now I wondered what else had been happening during those crisis moments. While I was worried about keeping the shop afloat, where had Carol been driving? While I sat in hospital waiting rooms during Mom's chemo, what was Carol doing with her hidden miles? Friday passed in a blur. I went through the motions at the shop, but my mind was on the GPS trackers. The app on my phone showed Carol's normal routine: home to bank to lunch to bank to home. No extra miles, no suspicious stops. Maybe the weekend would be different. That evening, Carol mentioned casually that she might visit her college roommate Lisa on Saturday. "Lisa's going through a tough divorce," she said, loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. "She needs some support. Girl talk, you know?" I happened to know, from absent-mindedly scrolling through Facebook earlier, that Lisa had moved to Seattle 2 years ago. But I kept that information to myself. "That's nice of you," I said. "Tell her I'm sorry about the divorce." "I will." "Oh, and Sunday I'll probably visit Mom. Maybe take her to church if she's feeling up to it." 2 separate alibis for the weekend, covering both days. Whatever Carol was doing, it happened on weekends. Saturday morning came clear and cold, October settling into the bones of Ohio. Carol was up early, humming in the shower. She made breakfast: scrambled eggs, bacon, whole wheat toast. My favorite? She was in a good mood, almost glowing with anticipation. "Big restoration job today?" she asked, pouring coffee into my favorite mug, the one she'd bought me that said, "World's Greatest Mechanic," in fading letters. "Yeah, 67 Mustang, full engine rebuild." The lie came easily. I was actually planning to spend the day monitoring the GPS trackers from my shop office. "Sounds fun. Don't work too hard." She kissed me goodbye at 8:45, and I tasted coffee and deception. I watched from the window as she got in her Honda, waited for the garage door to fully open, then drove away. The GPS app on my phone showed all 3 trackers active and moving. I grabbed my keys and headed to the shop, where I could monitor in privacy on multiple screens. I had security cameras, computers, and most importantly, no chance of Carol unexpectedly returning home. The tracker showed Carol heading toward Janet's house initially. She arrived at 9:10 a.m. and parked in the driveway. I held my breath, waiting to see if this was really book club or another deception. 12 minutes. She stayed exactly 12 minutes. Long enough to be seen, maybe grab something she'd forgotten, establish an alibi. Then she was moving again, heading north toward the highway. My heart rate increased as I watched the little dot representing my wife's car merge onto I-75 North. She accelerated to 70 miles per hour and held steady. The miles accumulated on my screen: 10, 20, 30, 40. Where was she going? She drove for over an hour and a half, passing exit after exit. Finally, after 97 miles, she took the exit for Vandalia. I'd heard of it, a small town north of Dayton, but couldn't think of any reason Carol would go there. The dot moved through the town, past the downtown area, out into rural routes. She was following State Route 40 now, then turned onto a smaller road, then another. 23 miles of increasingly remote driving, past farms and forests, into an area I'd never seen before. Then she stopped. I zoomed in on the satellite view, and my blood turned to ice water. Valley State Correctional Facility, a medium-security men's prison. The dot representing my wife's car sat stationary in the visitor parking lot. I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Who did Carol know in prison? Why had she never mentioned it? How long had this been going on? I pulled up the prison's website on another monitor. Visiting hours were 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. Visitors had to be pre-approved, undergo background checks, follow strict procedures. This wasn't a casual or spontaneous visit. Carol was on someone's approved visitor list. For 4 hours, I watched that dot remain stationary. 4 hours of my wife inside a prison, visiting someone she'd hidden from me completely. The questions multiplied exponentially. Was it a relative I didn't know about? An old friend who'd made bad choices? Someone from her past she'd never mentioned? At 2:30 p.m., the dot started moving again. Carol was leaving the prison, driving back the same route but faster now, like she was racing against time. She stopped at a grocery store 5 miles from our house, spending 30 minutes inside, establishing an alibi, buying props for whatever story she'd tell me. The tracker showed her returning to Janet's house at 4 p.m. This time she stayed until 7 p.m., the actual book club hours. She was maintaining her cover story, attending the real book club after her secret prison visit. When she came home that evening, she had a grocery bag and a paperback novel. The Last Mile, the thriller she'd mentioned. "How was book club?" I asked, noting the flush in her cheeks, the brightness in her eyes. She looked alive in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Really good. We had such a great discussion about the unreliable narrator device. Janet made those little sandwiches you like, the ones with the cucumber and cream cheese." She was animated, gesturing with her hands as she talked. "Oh, and Lisa says thanks for the support. The divorce is really rough on her." Lisa, who lived in Seattle. The lie rolled off her tongue like water. "Glad you had fun," I said. "What's on tap for tomorrow?" "Church with Mom, remember? Early service at 9, then maybe lunch at that diner she likes." Another lie, another cover story. I was beginning to see the pattern. Sunday morning, I left for the shop at 7 a.m., but actually parked 3 blocks away where I could watch our house. Carol's car started moving at 8 a.m., but not toward her mother's house in Riverside, not toward any church. West this time, on I-70. I followed on the GPS as she drove 87 miles to another destination I had to look up. Madison Correctional Institution. Another men's prison. Another 4-hour visit. Another stop on the way home, this time at her mother's house for exactly 45 minutes. Long enough to be seen, to maintain the story, to have details for the lies she'd tell me later. That evening, she described her mother's health, the sermon at church, which she must have looked up online, the weak coffee at the diner. Every detail perfectly crafted, every lie supported by just enough truth to be believable. 2 prisons, 2 different facilities. Same prisoner? Different prisoners? The mystery deepened. I spent the next week in detective mode. I researched both prisons extensively. Valley State housed about 1,500 inmates, drug dealers, armed robbers, white-collar criminals. Madison was similar, maybe slightly rougher, with more violent offenders. Both required visitors to be pre-approved, undergo background checks, follow strict procedures. I installed a small camera in Carol's car, hidden in the dome light assembly where it could capture the driver's seat and dashboard. It would record her preparations, maybe catch visitor badges or paperwork. I also started paying closer attention to things I'd previously ignored. Carol's laundry, looking for the UV stamps some prisons put on visitors' hands. Her credit card statements, mapping gas purchases to prison locations. Her phone, checking for calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The patterns emerged clearly once I knew what to look for. Regular Saturday and Sunday gas purchases at stations along I-75 and I-70. Cash withdrawals every Friday, probably for vending machines or commissary deposits at the prisons. The occasional purchase at stores near the facilities. Coffee before visits, food after. She'd been doing this for 4 years, and I'd never noticed because I'd never been looking. Friday night, Carol mentioned that she might visit her college roommate again. Lisa's really struggling, she said, folding laundry with mechanical precision. The divorce is getting ugly. Custody battles, asset division, the works. That's rough, I said, knowing Lisa's divorce had actually been finalized 18 months ago according to her Facebook posts. Tell her she has my sympathy. I will. And Sunday, I'll probably see Mom again. Maybe take her shopping if she's up for it. The same pattern. The same lies. The same careful construction of alibis. Saturday morning, the camera I'd installed captured everything. Carol sat in her car in our driveway, engine running, and began her transformation. She carefully applied makeup, not her usual subtle style, but something more dramatic. Darker eyeshadow, brighter lipstick, carefully sculpted eyebrows. She unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of her blouse, then adjusted her bra to show more cleavage. She sprayed perfume on her wrists, neck, and amazingly, between her breasts. Then she pulled out a folder from under the passenger seat and checked something inside. The camera caught a glimpse of official-looking forms, visitor authorization papers, and a name that made my stomach drop. Derek Kalinsky, inmate number 847291. Derek Kalinsky. The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew that name. Carol had mentioned him exactly once, years ago, during one of those late-night conversations early in our marriage where you share your romantic history. Derek had been her high school boyfriend, the bad boy with the motorcycle and the leather jacket, the one her parents had forbidden her to see, the one who'd gone to prison for assault when they were 20. I was so stupid back then, she'd said, curled against me in bed. I thought danger was exciting. Thank God I grew up and realized what really mattered. Stability. Kindness. Someone who would actually be there. She'd kissed me then, and I'd felt like the winner in some cosmic competition. Apparently, I'd been the consolation prize. I spent Saturday afternoon in an internet deep dive on Derek Kalinsky. His criminal record was extensive and disturbing. First, arrested at 18 for assault. Multiple arrests in his 20s for robbery, drug dealing, weapons charges. In and out of prison throughout the 2000s. His current sentence was 15 years for RICO violations and armed robbery, started 4 years ago. 4 years, exactly when Carol's Hidden Miles had started. The newspaper articles about his trial included photos. Derek at his sentencing, tall, muscular, covered in tattoos. He had that dangerous charisma some women found irresistible, the kind of man who looked like trouble because he was trouble. Even in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, he projected a raw magnetism that apparently still worked on my wife after all these years. But the real shock came when I hired a private investigator. Ray Hutchins was a former corrections officer who'd turned to private investigation after retirement. He knew the prison system, knew how to get information that wasn't publicly available. I met him at a coffee shop on the other side of town, far from anywhere Carol might appear. I need to know about prison visitation records, I said, sliding him a folder with Derek's information and Carol's details. Ray was in his 60s, with a kind of weathered face that had seen too much. He looked through the papers and whistled low. Visiting an inmate while married to someone else? Classic story. You sure you want to know? I'm sure. Give me 3 days. Ray called me Tuesday evening. Carol was at her book club, her actual book club this time, according to the GPS. You sitting down? Ray asked. Just tell me. Your wife isn't visiting as Carol Novak. She's registered as Sophia Kalinsky. Sophia? That's not... Wait, Kalinsky? Yeah. Ray's voice was grim. She's listed as his wife. Has been for 4 years. The shop floor seemed to tilt. I grabbed the workbench for support, my legs suddenly unable to hold my weight. That's impossible. We're married. She can't be. Bigamy, Ray said simply. Happens more than you'd think with inmates. They marry for the benefits. Conjugal visits at some facilities, more visitation rights, legal privileges. Your wife married this guy while married to you. But how? Don't they check? Different counties, different systems. If she used a different address, maybe filed in a county neither of you lived in, it could slip through. Marriage records aren't as connected as people think. I'll need to dig deeper for the specifics, but Tommy, your wife has been living a complete double life. I hung up and immediately vomited into the shop sink. The industrial cleaner smell mixed with bile made me retch again. 18 years. 18 years of marriage, and for the last 4, she'd been married to someone else. Someone in prison for violent crimes. Someone she drove hundreds of miles to see every weekend while lying to my face. Ray called back the next day with more information. Found the marriage certificate. They got married at Valley State 4 years ago. Prison ceremony, justice of the peace. She used a P.O. box address in Columbus and filed the paperwork in Franklin County. You two got married in Hamilton County, right? No automatic cross-reference between the systems. This is insane. Gets worse. I found her alternate identity. Full setup as Sophia Kalinsky, driver's license, credit cards, even a Facebook profile. She's part of online support groups for prison wives. Posts about waiting for her man, dealing with the injustice of his sentence. There are photos of her at the prison, wearing Free Derek shirts. My wife had a complete alternate life. A different name, different social media, different marriage. While she was sleeping next to me, she was dreaming of someone else. While she was wearing the ring I'd given her, she was also wearing his. There's more, Ray continued. The financial trail. She's been sending him money. About $500 monthly into his commissary accounts at both prisons. She's also been paying for his appeals lawyers. I found $60,000 in payments over 4 years to various law firms. $60,000? Where did she get? I stopped. Our savings. The home improvement fund we'd been building. The emergency medical fund. All the money she'd said was invested or set aside for the future. Want me to keep digging? Ray asked. Yes. Find everything. The next revelation came from the camera in Carol's car. She had a phone conversation while driving. A burner phone she kept hidden in the car. I could only hear her side, but it was enough. Baby, I hate leaving you there, she said, her voice soft and intimate in a way I hadn't heard in years. Just 7 more years if the appeal doesn't work. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too trusting, too focused on his shop. The money? I'll figure it out. I always do. The conjugal visit was amazing. I can still feel you. I love you too. You're the only one who ever really knew me, who ever really saw me. No, I can't leave him yet. We need his money for your lawyers. For when you get out. The shop's doing well. We'll have plenty when the time comes. I know it's hard, baby. It's hard for me too. But we're so close now. Just a few more years and we can be together for real. 7 more years. She was planning to wait 7 more years, then what? Divorce me? Take half of everything I'd built? Run away with her convict husband? I pulled over and dry heaved by the side of the road. The woman I'd shared my life with was planning my disposal like changing motor oil. Wait for the right interval, then drain and replace. Ray's continued investigation revealed even more disturbing details. Carol had been recording videos for Derek in our bedroom when I was at work. Nothing explicit on camera, but intimate messages, promises about their future, declarations of love. She'd been mailing these to other inmates' families who would smuggle them in during visits. a whole network of prison wives helping each other maintain relationships. This conjugal visit thing, Ray said during one of our meetings. Valley State allows them for married inmates, monthly private meetings in special housing units. Your wife isn't just visiting him, Tommy. They're having intimate relations. The betrayal was so complete, it almost became abstract, like pain so intense it transcends into numbness. My wife was having monthly intimate encounters with a violent criminal while coming home to our bed. I found more evidence in unexpected places. Carol's craft room, which I rarely entered, had a hidden folder in a box of old tax returns. Inside were plans labeled Fresh Start, 2031. Detailed strategies for divorcing me after Derek's release, claiming half the auto shop in the settlement, using the money to set Derek up in a motorcycle repair business in Arizona. There were real estate listings for Scottsdale, business license applications partially filled out, even a list of states with less restrictive policies for ex-convicts starting businesses. My shop, my life's work, the business I'd built from nothing, working 16-hour days, sacrificing everything. She was planning to gut it and hand it to a convicted felon. But the worst discovery came when Ray called on a Thursday evening. You sitting down? It had become his standard opening. What now? Derek isn't exactly faithful to your wife. What do you mean? He's got 2 other women visiting him. One at Valley State who claims to be his sister. She's not, I checked. Another at Madison listed as his cousin. Also not. Both are romantic relationships. Both are receiving money from his commissary account. The account Carol funds. Exactly. Your wife is financing her prison husband's other girlfriends. He's playing her just like she's playing you. I actually laughed. The absurdity of it all. My wife cheating on me with a prisoner who was cheating on her with multiple women, all while she funded the entire operation with money from my auto shop. Want to know their names? Ray asked. Why not? Let's complete this circus. Maria Gonzalez, 28, visits him at Valley State. Tiffany Brooks, 31, visits at Madison. Both think they're his only girl. Both are putting money in his account too, though not as much as your wife. 3 women. Derek was juggling 3 women from behind bars, and Carol was the primary investor in this romantic Ponzi scheme. That night, I watched Carol across the dinner table with new eyes. She talked about her day at the bank, a difficult refinancing, a first-time homebuyer's excitement, office politics. Normal Thursday conversation from a woman living an entirely abnormal life. You okay? She asked, noticing my distraction. You've been quiet lately. Just thinking about work, I said. Big decisions coming up. Anything I can help with? The irony was suffocating. No. This is something I need to handle myself. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her wedding ring, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy working overtime and weekends, caught the light. On her other hand, did she wear Derek's ring during prison visits? Did she have a separate wedding band for her other marriage? You know I'm here for you, right? She said. Whatever you need. We're a team. I squeezed back, feeling the calluses on her palm. Now I knew they were probably from the needle-nose pliers she used to disconnect the speedometer cable twice every weekend. I know, I said. That means a lot. That night I started planning my revenge. Not just divorce. Carol's bigamy had taken care of that. She'd face criminal charges, lose any claim to alimony, forfeit her rights to my assets. But I wanted more. I wanted her to feel the complete collapse of the elaborate deception she'd built. I wanted Derek to know he'd been exposed. I wanted the other women to know they were being played. I wanted everyone involved in this twisted situation to face the truth simultaneously. The plan required precision timing, like rebuilding an engine. Every component had to be in place before I turned the key. First, I consulted with Michelle Warren, a divorce attorney who specialized in criminal fraud cases. She came highly recommended and extremely expensive, but I needed the best. Her office was all leather and dark wood, the kind of place that whispered, "You'll win, but it'll cost you." Michelle was in her 50s, with silver hair and eyes that had seen every possible permutation of marital disaster. She reviewed my evidence, the GPS records, the photos, the bigamy documentation, the financial fraud, with increasing amazement. "In 30 years of practice," she said, setting down the folder, "I've never seen anything quite like this. Bigamy is rare enough. Bigamy with this level of deception and financial fraud? Your wife is looking at serious jail time." "Good," I said. "The divorce will be straightforward given the circumstances. Her bigamous marriage voids any claim to marital assets. The fraud and theft eliminate any possibility of alimony. She'll get nothing." "What about criminal charges?" "That's up to the prosecutor, but with this evidence, I'd say charges are inevitable. We need to be strategic about when and how we reveal this. You want maximum impact with minimum risk to your assets." We developed a timeline. December 15th would be the revelation date, the day of my shop's annual customer appreciation event. It was a big deal in our small business community, with hundreds of customers, local media coverage, and Carol always playing the role of supportive wife. This year would be different. "Between now and then," Michelle said, "keep documenting everything. Don't change your behavior. Don't hint that you know. The element of surprise is crucial." I followed her advice religiously. I kept playing the oblivious husband while documenting every lie, every deception, every hidden mile. The GPS trackers showed Carol maintaining her pattern. Prison visits every weekend, elaborate alibi construction, careful mileage management. The camera in her car revealed increasingly intimate preparations for Derek. She started wearing lingerie under her prison visit clothes. She practiced conversations in the mirror, rehearsing what she'd tell him. She cried sometimes after leaving the prison, not from sadness but from what looked like desperate longing. One Saturday, she forgot to turn off the burner phone properly, and it recorded part of her conversation with another prison wife. "The conjugal visits are the only thing keeping me sane," Carol said. 4 hours a month where we can pretend the bars don't exist." "Girl, I know," the other woman replied. "But at least Valley allows them. My man's in Supermax. No touching at all." "I can't imagine. Derek needs physical contact. He says it's the only thing that reminds him he's human." "How much longer?" 7 years if the appeal fails, but his lawyer thinks we might get it down to 5. "And your husband? Tommy?" Carol laughed, ugly and dismissive. "He has no idea. Thinks I'm at book club. He's sweet but clueless. I could probably tell him I was visiting Derek and he'd think it was charity work." The contempt in her voice when she said my name burned worse than the betrayal itself. In November, I started feeding Carol false information about a fictional automotive conference in Detroit on December 15th. "It's a big opportunity," I told her over dinner. "New diagnostic equipment, latest techniques, 3-day weekend thing." Her eyes lit up. "That's great, honey. You deserve a break. When do you leave?" "Early Saturday morning. Back Monday night." I could practically see the calculations in her head. 3 days without me. She could do an extended conjugal visit, maybe stay at a motel near the prison, maximize her time with Derek. Sure enough, she started making preparations. She booked a room at a comfort inn near Valley State for Friday night. She arranged with the prison for a 48-hour conjugal visit, the maximum allowed. She told elaborate lies about a spa weekend with girlfriends. I prepared packages of evidence for multiple recipients. Carol's employer would receive proof of her bigamy and fraud. She handled sensitive financial information, and this made her unsuitable for the position. The prison administrations would get evidence of the smuggling network and false identities. Derek's other women would receive proof of his multiple relationships and their financial contributions. The IRS would get documentation of unreported money transfers and gift taxes. Each package was carefully curated for maximum impact. I wanted dominoes to fall in sequence, each revelation triggering the next. December 15th came cold and bright, perfect winter weather for destroying lives. Carol left early that morning, practically glowing with anticipation. She kissed me goodbye, wished me luck at my conference, and drove away in her Honda with the speedometer cable already disconnected. She didn't know about the secondary electronic odometer I'd installed. She didn't know about the GPS trackers still broadcasting her location. She didn't know that instead of heading to Detroit, I was heading to Valley State Correctional Facility with my lawyer and a process server. At exactly 11 a.m., while Carol was in the conjugal visit trailer with Derek, the first package arrived at First National Bank. The HR director, Susan Martinez, opened it to find comprehensive evidence of Carol's bigamy, her false identity as Sophia Kalinsky, and records showing she'd been using bank computers to research Derek's appeals during work hours. By noon, Carol's employment was terminated, her accounts frozen pending investigation, and a criminal referral had been made to local law enforcement. At 1 p.m., the prison administration received their package. The evidence of smuggling, the network of wives bringing in contraband, the false identities used for visits, it triggered an immediate lockdown. Guards descended on the conjugal visit trailer where Carol and Derek were, ending their visit 8 hours early. Carol was detained for questioning while Derek was placed in solitary pending investigation. The conjugal visit program was suspended indefinitely, affecting dozens of other couples. At 2 p.m., Maria Gonzalez and Tiffany Brooks received simultaneous emails with evidence of Derek's multiple relationships. Both women immediately drove to their respective prisons. Maria arrived at Valley State just as Carol was being released from questioning. I watched from my truck in the parking lot as the two women faced each other. The confrontation was brief but volcanic. "You're Sophia?" Maria asked, recognizing Carol from the photos I'd sent. "Who are you?" Carol's voice was shaky from hours of interrogation. "I'm Derek's fiancé." "Who are you?" "I'm his wife." "No, I'm his fiancé." We've been together for 2 years. The realization hit both women simultaneously. They'd both been conned by the same man, both sending money, both believing they were special. The shouting match that followed was captured on prison security cameras and would later be used as evidence. At 3 p.m., I approached with Michelle Warren and the process server. Carol was sitting on the hood of her Honda, makeup smeared from crying, her carefully styled hair disheveled from the confrontation. "Car trouble again?" I asked, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. She looked up, and I watched the blood drain from her face. "Tommy? What are you doing here?" "GPS shows you've been here every weekend for 4 years. That's a lot of miles, Carol. Or should I call you Sophia?" Her legs gave out. She slumped against the Honda, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Michelle stepped forward. "Mrs. Novak, you're being served with divorce papers and notice of criminal charges for bigamy, fraud, and theft." "Tommy, please, you don't understand." Carol started. "I understand everything," I cut her off. "The speedometer cable, the $60,000 in legal fees, the conjugal visits. I understand that you married him 4 years ago while married to me. It wasn't supposed to. I never meant." She couldn't finish either sentence. "How?" she finally whispered. "How did you know?" I held up the magnetic box with her speedometer cable tools. "The numbers never lie, Carol. Miles don't just disappear. When something doesn't add up, I investigate until it does." The police arrived then, summoned by the prison administration. Carol wasn't arrested immediately, but was informed that charges would be filed. Her marriage to Derek, being fraudulent, was legally void. But the criminal implications remained severe. Michelle explained Carol's legal situation while I quietly removed the fuel pump relay from the Honda. It wouldn't start now. She'd have to ride back with us. 3 hours in my tow truck with my lawyer reading bigamy statutes aloud. The shop, Carol said suddenly, desperation creeping into her voice. I helped build that business. I supported you through the lean years. You stole from that business, Michelle corrected. Every disconnected mile was theft of services. Every part sent to Derek was embezzlement. Every dollar you sent him was marital asset fraud. You have no claim to anything. The ride back was silent except for Michelle occasionally reading from Ohio Revised Code regarding bigamy, fraud, and marital asset forfeiture. Carol sat between us, shrinking with each mile, her elaborate deception collapsing around her. At home, she found her belongings packed in boxes, the locks changed, and a restraining order preventing her from entering the shop. Her Honda was returned with a detailed bill for $15,000 in excessive maintenance from the hidden 80,000 miles. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, standing in what used to be our driveway. Maybe Derek's sister has room, I suggested. Oh, wait, that's not really his sister, is it? Just another woman he's conning. You don't understand, she said, tears streaming. Derek and I have history. We were meant to be together. You were just what, Carol? Just the stable guy who paid for everything while you played prison wife? It wasn't like that. I loved you too in my way. Your way involved bigamy and an exit strategy that included taking half my shop. Her face went white. You found the plans. I found everything. The videos. The Facebook profile. The entire Sophia Kalinsky identity. 4 years of evidence, Carol. 4 years of lies documented in detail. She stood there in the driveway, surrounded by boxes of her possessions, the winter wind cutting through her prison visit outfit. The woman who'd managed 2 marriages, hidden 80,000 miles, and maintained an elaborate deception for 4 years looked utterly defeated. For what it's worth, she said quietly, the person you married was real. That version of me, the one who loved stability and kindness, she existed. But so did the girl who loved Derek. I tried to be both. I failed at both. No, I corrected. You succeeded at being neither. You became someone who could lie to everyone, including yourself. The last time I saw Carol free was at her sentencing 6 months later. She pled guilty to bigamy and fraud charges, receiving 6 months in county jail, 2 years probation, and was ordered to pay full restitution. She looked smaller in the courtroom, diminished without her elaborate deception to prop her up. Derek's situation deteriorated even further. The investigation revealed he'd been running a contraband ring using the Prison Wives network. 5 years were added to his sentence. He was transferred to a maximum security facility in Texas, making visits nearly impossible. The conjugal visit program at Valley State was permanently discontinued. Carol served 4 months with good behavior. She emerged to find her life in ruins. First National Bank had fired her for cause, making her ineligible for unemployment. Her financial services career was over. No institution would hire someone convicted of bigamy and fraud. The story had made regional news. Local woman maintains 2 marriages, 1 with prisoner. She moved in with a cousin in Cleveland, finding work as a night shift cashier at a truck stop. $11 an hour, no benefits, no future. The woman who'd orchestrated elaborate deceptions now wore a polyester uniform and sold coffee to truckers. Derek, from his maximum security cell in Texas, sent her one final letter through another inmate's mail privileges. Ray got me a copy. Sophia/Carol/whatever your name is. Thanks for nothing. Your sloppy mistakes got me 5 extra years and transferred to hell. Maria and Tiffany were always better anyway. Don't write back, we're done. D. 15 years of waiting, 80,000 hidden miles, a criminal record, and a destroyed life, all for a man who discarded her the moment she became inconvenient. My shop, meanwhile, thrived after the scandal. The community rallied around me, seeing me as a victim of elaborate deception. Business increased by 30%. Customers specifically chose my shop to support me. I hired 2 new mechanics and expanded into the neighboring building. The mechanical evidence I'd gathered became legendary in legal circles. The speedometer cable modification, the calculated mileage, the systematic documentation. It became a case study in forensic accounting through automotive mechanics. Michelle Warren used it in legal seminars. When the numbers don't add up, the Tommy Novak case. I struggled with trust but found unexpected support. A support group formed at my shop, other betrayed spouses meeting monthly to work on cars and share stories. We called it Honest Mechanics, and it became a place where people fixed broken machines while processing broken marriages. Working on cars became therapeutic. Every restoration was a metaphor, taking something damaged and making it functional again. Every diagnostic was a reminder that problems could be solved with careful observation and systematic investigation. A year after the divorce, I met Sarah at an automotive trade show. She was a forensic accountant presenting on fraud detection in small businesses. She understood numbers, appreciated precision, and found my need to verify odometer readings endearing rather than paranoid. "Trust but verify," she said on our first date when I unconsciously checked the mileage on her car. Ronald Reagan said it about nuclear missiles, but it works for relationships too. We took things slowly. Every milestone was documented, not from paranoia, but from a shared appreciation for transparency. When she moved in after 18 months, we created spreadsheets for household expenses. When we got engaged, we had separate and joint accounts with complete visibility. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but it was honest. Carol tried to reconnect 2 years later. She sent a letter from Cleveland, water-stained and desperate. "Tommy, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I need you to understand. Derek was an addiction. The prison visits, the secret miles, the double life. It was like a drug. Every lie was a hit. Every visit a high. I destroyed everything for that high. I see that now. I work nights at a truck stop and have 12 hours to think about the 80,000 miles I drove to nowhere. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I know what I lost, what I threw away. You deserved better. You deserve someone who could see that stability and kindness are not consolation prizes but grand prizes. Someone who understood that a good man who fixes things is worth 100 bad boys who break them." Carol. I kept the letter but didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some miles once driven in deception can't be taken back. 5 years after the discovery, I received notice that Derek had been killed in a prison fight. Something about debts and contraband. He died as he lived, violently and pointlessly. Carol would have been a widow if their marriage had been legal. Instead, she was nothing to him, not even a legitimate mourner. Ray, who'd become a friend, told me Carol tried to attend the funeral but was turned away by Derek's actual family, who'd never known about her. She stood outside the cemetery in the rain, watching from a distance as they buried the man she'd destroyed her life for. The Honda Accord that had revealed everything finally died at 201,847 miles. Carol couldn't afford to fix it. It sat in her cousin's driveway in Cleveland, slowly rusting, the odometer frozen at the exact mileage where her double life had ended. A monument to deception, measured in miles that couldn't be hidden forever. I kept the speedometer cable tools, the magnetic box, the pre-worn nut, the needle nose pliers. They sit in my shop's display case next to other memorabilia. Customers sometimes ask about them, and I tell them the story. Not all of it. That would take hours. But enough. Everything leaves evidence, I tell them. Every mile driven, every choice made, every lie told. The trick is knowing how to read the signs. Young mechanics starting out sometimes ask for advice. I always tell them the same thing. Pay attention to the numbers. They never lie. When something doesn't add up, investigate. Don't assume, don't guess, verify. Sarah and I married last spring in a small ceremony at the shop. No elaborate deception, no hidden meanings, just honest promises between two people who understood that trust is built on transparency. Her former colleagues from forensic accounting mixed with my mechanic friends, everyone understanding that we were people who fixed things. She fixed books, I fixed cars. Together, we'd fixed ourselves. Our wedding rings are engraved with our motto, every mile counted. It's both a promise and a reminder that in our marriage, nothing is hidden. Every journey is shared, and the odometer always tells the truth. The shop now has a sign in the waiting room. Honest mileage, honest service. Customers appreciate the transparency. They know that at Tommy's Auto Repair, the numbers always add up, the work is always documented, and the truth is always told. Sometimes I think about those 80,000 hidden miles. Each one represented a choice, to disconnect from truth, to drive toward deception, to maintain an impossible double life. Carol drove those miles believing she could have everything. The stable husband and the dangerous lover, the security and the excitement, the truth and the lie. But cars, like lives, accumulate honest wear regardless of what the odometer shows. The truth exists in the tire treads, the brake pads, the engine wear. You can disconnect the cable, hide the miles, create elaborate deceptions, but eventually, someone who knows how to look will see the evidence. The numbers never lie. They revealed Carol's deception, documented Derek's con, exposed an entire network of prison wives living double lives. They also rebuilt my life, restored my faith in truth, and led me to someone who understood that transparency is the foundation of trust. Every morning, I open the shop and look at that display case with Carol's speedometer tools. They remind me that some people will go to extraordinary lengths to hide their journey, but ultimately, the miles we travel leave marks that can't be erased. The odometer might lie, but the engine knows the truth. The speedometer might be disconnected, but the wear patterns remain. Carol is still in Cleveland, last I heard. Still working nights at the truck stop, still living with her cousin, still driving a broken Honda she can't afford to fix. She existed in a gray zone between her two failed marriages, neither Tommy's wife nor Derek's widow, neither innocent nor fully criminal, neither forgiven nor completely condemned. I've moved on, but I haven't forgotten. How could I? The evidence is everywhere. In my successful business, in my happy marriage, in my hard-won wisdom about trust and verification. The 80,000 hidden miles taught me that love isn't just about feeling, it's about choosing. Every day, Carol chose to disconnect that cable. Every weekend, she chose to drive to Derek. Every night, she chose to lie to me. Now, every day, I choose to connect. To truth, to Sarah, to the honest life we've built. Every weekend, I choose to stay present instead of driving toward deception. Every night, I choose transparency over secrets. The speedometer cable in my truck can't be disconnected. It's electronic, integrated, tamper-proof. But even if it could be, I wouldn't. I've learned that hidden miles always surface eventually, that disconnection leads to discovery, and that the truth, like a properly maintained engine, runs better in the long term. Customers still bring in cars with mysterious mileage discrepancies. Now I know exactly what to look for: the tool marks, the wear patterns, the telltale signs of deception. Sometimes I find evidence of affairs, sometimes fraud, sometimes just poorly executed attempts to preserve warranty coverage. But I always remember that behind every disconnected cable is a human story. Someone making choices, hiding journeys, believing they can maintain impossible deceptions. They rarely can. The numbers always tell the truth, even when the people we love don't. Carol's 80,000 hidden miles are history now, documented in court records and divorce papers. But their lesson remains. Pay attention, verify everything, and remember that in mechanics, as in marriage, when the numbers don't add up, there's always a reason. The shop closes at 6 now. No more late nights wondering where Carol really is. No more weekends tracking GPS monitors. Just honest work, honest relationships, and the certainty that every mile is counted, every journey is real, and every connection is genuine. The speedometer never lies. It might be disconnected, manipulated, hidden, but ultimately, the truth accumulates like miles on an engine. You can hide the numbers, but you can't hide the where. You can disconnect the cable, but you can't disconnect from consequences. Carol learned that the hard way across 80,000 hidden miles that led nowhere. I learned it too, through the investigation that revealed them. Now we both know, the numbers never lie. The miles always matter. And the truth, like a well-maintained engine, always runs longer than deception. Every mile counted, every mile revealed, every mile, in the end, told the truth.